Welcome to Evolve to Succeed, the podcast that brings together entrepreneurs, founders, business leaders and experts to talk about their journeys and explore the link between personal and business success. I'm your host, Warren Munson, founder of Evolve, a coaching, training and development company focused on enabling business and personal success and creating a community of like-minded individuals. Whether that be through our peer groups, one-to-one coaching, our training and development programs for you and your teams, or through our content and events, our mission is to get the best out of each individual and inspire them to be better both in life and in business. If you want to learn more about Evolve, including our beautiful co-working space in Ashley Cross in Poole, then please go to evolvemembers.com, where you'll find great content, insights, details of all of our services, and also information on our forthcoming events. For now though, let's get on with the show. Welcome to this week's episode. Today we hear from Richard North, co-founder and CEO of Wow Stuff, whose innovative toys are sold in major retailers around the globe, from Hamleys in London to Walmart in the US. Recent awards include the 2020 Global Toy of the Year for their Harry Potter Invisibility Cloak. Yes, you heard that right, an invisibility cloak. Along the journey, Richard has either founded or co-founded and exited successfully several companies in a variety of different sectors. In 2010, he also appeared on an episode of The Secret Millionaire. Clearly, Richard has a passion for the toy industry, as you'll hear during the course of our conversation, and I thought it'd be fascinating to get his perspective on this sector. But my intrigue to interview Richard was really caught by a LinkedIn post that he made recently about a terrible car accident he had in 2001 that saw him counting from 0 to 10 and back again just to stay alive. That moment naturally changed Richard's life profoundly, and his portrayal of how he worked through his injuries and overcame some severe obstacles in both life and business meant I was intrigued to sit down and have this conversation with him. I hope you'll be inspired by Richard's story and intrigued and fascinated by his passion for his industry as I was. Welcome, Richard, to the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
Thank you, Warren. Nice to be here.
It's going to be great having this conversation with you because I'm fascinated. I suppose I'm a big kid at heart, and I'm fascinated to talk to you about the toy industry and learn more about the toy industry. But I suppose when we get onto that and your current business, Wow Stuff, we'll probably talk about when that started. But pre-starting that, you'd been successful, you'd been entrepreneurial, but then there was a car accident, wasn't there, in 2001, which transformed and changed your life, I suppose, and led you in this direction. So if you don't mind, Richard, I'd kind of like to start there. And I know it's a dark, deep place to probably start a conversation, but let's kick off with, tell our listeners a little bit about what happened to you in 2001, please.
Sure. Well, I was coming home from work. I had a business, an e-commerce business that I'd set up over the previous 3 years. This was the beginning of the internet e-commerce era, and it was full on, very intensive type of business. We were growing very quickly, and sort of at that time, my life was full on with work and trying to build this business. And I had a super family, had 2 kids, married, lived in the Midlands, Wolverhampton, and with my success, I had a few toys. I had a nice Porsche sports car. I'm coming home one evening, and as I came round a bend, I used to come round every day coming back from work. The car, the steering was the first thing I noticed, went like jelly, and I wasn't going that fast. It was about 35 miles an hour. What I hadn't realised was I was on a bit of an oil slick, so there'd been an oil spillage.
Okay.
And the car spun and crashed.
Wow. But it's not quite as simple as that, is it, Richard? That underestimates the story somewhat.
Well, as it spun, I remember. I don't actually share. I don't know whether I've actually shared this at all. Actually, what I'm going to say next. I know you picked up on my LinkedIn post, but the detail of what actually happened, I've never really shared. So the car spun, and as it happened, you've heard that story where people say their lives flashed in front of them or everything slowed down. Well, it did slow down as the car spun, and it probably only spun for 4 or 5 seconds maximum before impacting into a lamppost side on. But it did feel like slow motion. And it sounds a bit crude, but the word that went through my mind as it happened was the F word. I knew I was in a whole heap of trouble.
Something was going to come.
Yeah, something. Wherever it was going to end up, it wasn't going to look good. It wasn't going to be good. And so it spun, and I hit the lamppost side on. I had a soft top car, and the car just wrapped around that lamppost like a banana. And I remember that the impact was immense. I don't know whether I can remember hearing the bang, but more felt the bang. And the first thing I remember in those early seconds was looking down at my lap. The steering wheel, as I looked down, was almost in my lap, but so was the lamppost. So the lamppost was directly in front of me. My legs were broken clean through. They were still attached to my torso, but they were broken clean through and wrapped around the lamppost. And I could see the sole of my foot. Doesn't sound very nice. And extreme pain then followed.
Yeah. And then what effect did that then have on the business, on your life?
Well, as I sat there, I was lucky enough that a friend came along within a minute or two and contacted, said, look, I'll contact your wife, ambulance is on its way, and so on. And what flashed through my mind was, okay, I've lost my legs, and I suppose my positive spirit took over, and I've always been somebody who tries to look on the bright side of things if there was one in that at that moment. But just to keep me fighting, the positivity was, well, even if I lose my legs, I'll have a wheelchair and I can adapt it to hold a laptop, and I can therefore still work. I'll still have my wife, I still have my 2 kids. My wife was actually pregnant with our third, and 8 months pregnant at the time. So I was thinking of these kind of positive things. And the other thing that I mentioned in my LinkedIn post was 10 more seconds. So as the pain became so extreme, I also became extremely tired. And the paramedic sat by me in the crumpled bits of the car. They couldn't cut me out. They were trying everything to try and get my body out. My legs were trapped in some metal. And they brought in a acetylene torch to cut my legs off because they didn't think they were going to be able to get me out alive, and it was a last-ditch effort. But a fireman, like out of a movie, a huge fireman, like a bodybuilder type, decided to have one last go. And I'm getting really tired. The paramedics, I heard her say, his heartbeats dropped to 18 beats a minute. He's going. He's only got a few seconds left. And I thought to myself, 10 more seconds. I'll hold on for 10 more seconds. So I actually didn't count down. I didn't count up to 10. I counted down from 10. So I would go in my mind, I'd say, stay awake, stay awake. That was in my mind. And I'd go 10, 9, 8, 7. And every time I got to 0, I'd think 10 more seconds. I can just last 10 more seconds before I fall asleep, which I guess, I believe that meant that would be it. So I'd count and count and count. And, 1 minute, 5 minutes, 20 minutes later, I'm still there. And then an hour and 20 minutes, they get me out, they put me in the ambulance, and they take me into the hospital where my life, really did change from that moment. I went into hospital, the doctors came over, and one of the doctors, he said, I'm going to straighten your legs, and then I'm going to inject you with morphine. And the moment that the morphine hits, within certainly a few seconds, you won't feel any pain. He was right. I mean, the pain when he straightened my legs was unbelievable. But when he injected me, within a few seconds, I couldn't feel anything. And I felt as if I could have just gone back to work there and there. That was the difference. But what kept me fighting more than anything else was when he said, I asked him, do you think you'll be able to save my legs? And he said, I'm going to save your legs. You will walk again. And
Wow.
that was amazing. And within 6 weeks, he promised me.
That was the inspiration. Wow. And is that what happened? Within 6 weeks, were you walking again?
I wouldn't call it walking. He was certainly my inspiration in that moment and for over those next few weeks. But yeah, in that 6 weeks, I was on a Zimmer frame. So on about the sixth week, they pushed me to the side of the bed and they helped me stand up, and I felt faint because I hadn't stood up obviously for that period. And then they sat me back down. Eventually, I managed to grab hold of the Zimmer frame, and if you can call it walking, yeah, I moved forward a few paces, and then just set about trying to focus on my recovery and yeah, the
And I
uphill
assume
climb.
full recovery was a number of years. Didn't happen overnight.
That's right. Yeah, I was on crutches for I don't know 6 months, 9 months, and then was able to walk with a very bad limp. My muscles had wasted away. I couldn't. I'd got metal pins, which I still have in my femurs, and my hand would have been broken. My pelvis had been split in two as well. So there's lots of different bits that we're having to recover, and we're recovering at their own pace. But after about a year and a half, I started to get depressed because I wasn't exercising, and I'd always done exercise. I was big into my
Okay.
karate. So yeah, got quite depressed.
And how did you, up until that point, you got depressed? That's that resilience must have been kicking in, and that positivity that perhaps you had at that moment of impact kicked in. How do you think you sustained it for that long? And how do you think people that do have those kind
Yeah.
of incidents in their life can
You,
build that
well,
resilience?
it definitely wasn't a one man show. It wasn't because I was extraordinarily strong or brilliant at being positive. It was because I had a fantastic wife who was totally devoted to me, and I got two kids to very much live for as well.
Mm,
I did not want to be a father that couldn't do things with them as they grew up because they were very young, 4 or 5 years old. So uh, that kept me focused and thinking, right, I've got to find a way somehow to get through this brick wall of depression, by going over it, under it, round it, or through it. It's a saying I've used a lot of
mm.
times in when I've met business obstacles. So I went to the doctors and I told him how depressed I was feeling because I couldn't do any exercise and I couldn't walk around very freely. Terrible limp and like I say, wasting away in terms of my muscle mass. And the doctor said try swimming, and I'd only
Okay.
ever swum when I was a kid at school, but I took it up, and that was the start of my physical recovery and the support of my wife, my family, my mum, my dad, my parents, and all my friends. Are really all of that together with a positive spirit, positive attitude, and a business also to have to make sure it worked. Um,
Mm,
Otherwise, we had nothing to support
yeah.
us. Made me resilient, I suppose.
Resilient and gave you focus, didn't you? Do you ever look back now about how your life may have been different if the accident hadn't occurred?
Wow, wow. I don't. That's the first time I've ever been asked that question. I mean, I don't normally talk about this accident, and
No.
it's quite interesting. Since I did the post, I was going to write that post a year ago, and something stopped me. In fact, I did write it a year ago, but never posted it, and I only posted it recently. But I've never really thought how things could have been. But I suppose that's because I've gone through life like most people with all sorts of opportunities and problems and obstacles to overcome.
Mm,
So I just see it as another. I'm happy that I'm alive. So rather than
yeah.
I'm thinking, "Oh, that was bad luck," well, it was more good luck that I'm alive, and I think that's probably my demeanour generally. And so I expect life to be a roller coaster, and it's just how you deal with
Yeah.
it.
That's probably a good definition of resilience, isn't it? Actually, as we move on now and talk a bit about wow stuff and your journey there. I mean, that probably does sum up resilience, doesn't it? Is recognizing that life is a roller coaster and it's not a smooth journey, and you're going to hit challenges and hurdles. It's how you accept and overcome those, and how you find, I think you alluded to it earlier, it's how you find the solutions, isn't it? And how you analyze that and how you just take the first step forward.
It's a state of mind, isn't it? If you look at people who are
Definitely.
successful in life, whether it be with their families, with their friendships, or with their work, it invariably comes down to a state of mind. They don't necessarily possess smarts that are over and above the next person. They're not necessarily more intelligent. It is more to do, as I've found over and over again, with the state of mind. You know,
Yeah.
Positivity, a hunger, those kinds of things.
Yeah, hunger, drive, and positivity, definitely. But in 2006, you founded Wow Stuff with some other individuals. I mean, you talk about the fact you're kind of in those early days of e-commerce. How did you come across the toy industry? What drew you into the toy industry?
Complete chance. So I'd had two previous companies before the internet business, and I was lucky enough, maybe naive almost, that as I was building them, I didn't know what the ceilings were. The
Okay.
I didn't know where other people might have looked at the business I was setting up and said, "Oh, that can't work, and this won't work, and don't do that." When you're young and you haven't got experience, it's sometimes a good thing. So you have a go at stuff, and you might do it
Yeah.
slightly differently. But that slight change that you've made has made it work on something that hasn't
Yeah.
worked for other people before. So that's great. So I built this business when people said, well, you'll need loads more cash than you've got, you'll need more collaborations than you've got, partnerships. But I didn't know what I didn't know, went for it, built it. And so I built two businesses and sold those. And then the internet business came along, the e-commerce business. That was the first time I'd done direct to consumer, so retail, if you like,
Okay.
inspired by another very successful entrepreneur whose book I'd read, who was a retailer, and he'd done incredibly well. And I loved his mantras, I loved his processes. When I got into retail, I realized I wasn't the detail person that you need to be in
Okay.
retail, and I knew I wasn't a natural born retailer. So after exiting the e-commerce business, I wanted to get back to some kind of B2B type business. So I started importing gifts and branding them up under the licensed brands. So the Science Museum was one of our first brands, museum in London that was quite well known, and we did some educational entertainment type gifts. That led us to do Doctor Who products and Top Gear products, so licensed branded products. And it was really also formed as a business through a chance meeting with two scientists. So I'd sold up, I'd recovered from my accident, I'd gone back to karate. 2006, I'm thinking, what shall I do next? I'd made a bit of money, so I was fairly relaxed and chilled with the world. And I was at a
Okay.
gift fair, and I met two scientists who were inventors, really, by nature. And they showed me one of their inventions, and I thought, well, I've got a bit of money. I love their attitude. I love the fact they come from environmental sciences. They had an inner desire to be a change in the world, longer term. And I thought, purpose driven. I like that. Um, and I thought, I'll back them. I've got some cash, I'll back them. So that's how we formed Wow Stuff. So, as I say, Science Museum was our first license, then Top Gear, then BBC. And that eventually, after 4 or 5 years of very fast growth, took us into the toy industry.
Wow. And it's interesting in life and in your business journeys, generally, that serendipity, meeting chance meetings, how they really impact on your life.
Yeah, Warren, that sums a lot of it all up. The serendipity, the chance meetings. Maybe you do make your own chances that are that thing we call serendipity. But you have to be out there. You have to have a positive outlook. You have to connect with people. And the more people you connect with, you don't see it necessarily at the time as there being anything more to it than a casual meeting, a drink with somebody, uh, bumping into somebody at a business event. And then maybe a year or two goes by and you find you've got something in common, or they call you up and they say, You're the guy in toys. I've met this other guy over here. He's got this interesting project, and so on. And these dots start to get linked up. And I would say that as I've got older, I've therefore got more and more contacts. And as I've got more and more contacts, I've been able to do more and more deals and achieve more things.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? But it is about that, isn't it? It's about going and building the relationships and being very open-minded. And I suppose in the early days of your business career, you don't often get that. Some people do, and they succeed very quickly, I think. But if you start to try and see the pound in everything,
yeah.
My own story would be when I stopped trying to see the pound in everything and saw the opportunity in everything. That's when things start to connect, and that's when things start to happen. Would you agree with that?
That's an interesting analogy. Yeah, I guess you're saying, when you meet somebody or you look at an opportunity, where's the money in this? And that can be a bit short-sighted. Yes, because contacts, like I say, don't sometimes come good in terms of them leading to a business opportunity for months, quite often years ahead. So it's interesting you say that point as well about when you're starting out, you haven't got the contacts. There's one of my family members, my son-in-law. He's only a young guy, 27. He's one of the most connected people I think I've ever met. Now, just to perhaps explain that a little bit more. So we live in a small town in Shropshire. There isn't a person in the town I don't think he doesn't know. And it's not because he ever saw a pound in anybody else. He never saw these networks, these people, as opportunities to make money. He was just a naturally nice, outgoing person that loved communicating with people, understanding their stories. But now at 27, so he's grown up here all his life, and now at 27, many of these people are his business clients because he's a financial advisor. He never thought that was the route it was going to go down. And because he's got such history, they know him and they trust him.
Yeah. Important, isn't it? Definitely. And just going back to something you said earlier, which was quite interesting, because Wow Stuff 2006, those early years, you said you got into that business because it felt like at the time, because of the two scientists, a business with purpose. Now that's quite a well coined phrase now in the last couple of years. B Corps, all of that, business with purpose. There's books being written on it. Do you think you knew you were doing it because of purpose at the time, or now when you reflect, it was about the purpose?
I definitely didn't know it at the time. And I'm an avid reader of business books and looking at new business mantras that might appear in existing ones. And like you say, purpose has become a big thing. I suppose in my very early years, when I was a salesman at the age of 20, I chanced upon some books to do with marketing, specifically advertising. And that's when I learned about USPs. And that's probably the early signs of purpose. In those times, obviously, unique selling proposition was more about what is the feature about this particular product that means people will buy it more than any other feature. But as we're talking about purpose, as we get into this new age, the USP with so many businesses is going to become, to do with the environment, being eco-friendly with your product, or doing well for others, being charitable. The humanity has risen to the surface. It kind of went away through the crass 80s, if you like, where it was all about money, which was quite shallow, and it seems to be coming back round now to things that are all about humanity and life.
Humanity and values. Yeah, definitely. So the Wow Stuff is all about, if I understand it correctly, is you are innovative in kind of the toys and things that you look to make, and then you find a brand to license that to. Is that right? Or is it more that you could get the license for something and then you find the solution? Which way does it work?
It kind of can work both ways. So we're a bunch of I suppose about 60 people, of which about a dozen of them are in product development. We we worked with licensed brands, probably because it was easy to look at a brand like Harry Potter, where we were already instilled with lots of information about what the brand's about, and what the characters are about, and what the themes are about. So, as a group of product developers, you're handed a piece of intellectual property with lots of knowns. And so it speeds up our product development process. We can look at that and say, okay, well, it's about wizards. What do wizards do? They cast spells. Okay, and what do they do? How do they do that? They use a wand. Okay, so we know what the product is. We know what the purpose of the product is, and we know that it's got a huge following. So all of those things are already boxes ticked. All we have to do now is create a wand that the target consumer will want. If you go from the other position of, are we an innovation business first and foremost, and do we look at innovation first and then find a brand? Well, if we do that, sometimes we can apply that innovation to a brand. Sometimes, someone in the organisation will come up with an idea for a product without any view on the application to a brand. It will just be, I've thought of a brilliant toy idea. What do you think? And we might say, that can be a standalone product. And we live for innovation. We live for that moment when a kid gets one of our toys, and the first thing they say when they look at it, play with it, interact with it, is wow. Because that takes me back to a time in my childhood that we've all had, haven't we? Where
absolutely,
you have a toy, and it's Christmas Day. You've wanted maybe that toy. Sometimes you know what the toy is going to be. You're hoping, you don't know which box maybe it's going to be in with the wrapping, and you rip it apart. There it is. And you've just so prayed for it. You've dreamt about it, and you rip that packaging off, and it's there, and you just, wow. And that memory, and then playing with it and role-playing with it, can live with you, and often does. If it's that memorable a product, if it was that wanted at that time, it sticks with you forever, well into adulthood. And
fun becomes a fundamental memory, doesn't it?
Yeah, one of your really fun, and everything about that memory is fun and enjoying it.
So, where do you go with the toy industry now, though? Because is there not the challenge that kids of today, they've got their devices, they're in front of them, they're distracted by online games? From what I can see, all of your products are very tactile. Some of them are very educational, but they're very hands-on. They've got technology in them, but they're traditional toys. Is there a challenge for you as a business that how do you stay current, and how do you put product out there that people continue to play with?
Well, I think if you look back at the last sort of 100, 150 years of commerce and industrialisation, those businesses that adapted continued, and quite often those that didn't to the new circumstances or to new technology eventually died. We don't want to be one of the ones that dies.
You don't want to be a Kodak.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great example, isn't it? So we embrace new technology and look at it and think, how can we use that to make a richer play experience with a toy? And you talk about screened devices. Yes, that's pulling a lot of the available time, leisure time, downtime that a kid has that may have been previously given to a physical toy. So they're now looking at the screens. So what we're doing is we're looking at those, the content that those kids are viewing, and saying, okay, there's a correlation here with the enjoyment and the following the kid has for that piece of content. Can that translate into a physical form? Will they buy toys off the back of that content? And good examples could be Roblox, the online portals that have got all these games and being developed all the time, and has huge billions of kids, hundreds of millions of kids following it and enjoying those games. So we would look at something like that and say, okay, that game there's got terrific following. Could it be made into a toy range? Is it toyetic? Could we do collectibles from it? Other areas could be where technology has moved forward so fast, such as blockchain, NFTs, non-fungible tokens. So these digital images that are verified as being unique and authentic if you own it. Well, could we do a physical version of that? So all the time, whilst things do change and the kids get pulled away from using traditional toys in a traditional manner, how do we adapt, change, and move with it?
Yeah, and how do you not just stay stagnant? I suppose. What I'm also really interested in is, you're a successful owner managed, entrepreneurial business, and you work with these big brands and the license. I mean, do you ever feel like the minnow and Goliath, David and Goliath type scenarios? And surely that must come with some legal ramifications and challenges from time to time.
My goodness, before I got into toys, I didn't realise there could be an industry as good and as bad. Because I mean, the good bit is that we're in toys, and toys are fun, and toys make you smile, and like we were saying before, they create fantastic memories. But the bad is it's an industry where the products themselves, 99% of them are designed, developed, and come from a simple idea that somebody somewhere had. They are able then to put that idea into making it into a physical product. They have it manufactured, often in the Far East, China, so it's built at the right price, and they get early sales that take off, and they think, right, I'm in business. And then somebody comes along and says, well, there's no patent on that. It's not really protected. It's a great idea. I'm already set up. I've already been making toys for a while. It's easy for me to copy it. And I also know more retailers than this guy over here who came up with the original idea. So then they flood the market, they make a quick buck, right, and they're gone before you know it. That's happened to us on a few occasions. But when it first happened, I was shocked how fast, aggressive these copycat companies could be, and how little protection you have, and you certainly don't get any governmental protection. You have to do it through the civil means. Going to lawyers and engaging with them and paying them a fortune to try and protect your rights, the rights that you might have. And incredible experience. We've had several incredible experiences in that sense.
Yeah. And I suppose you just got to fight your corner, but that must be something that's quite. I mean, I've met you for the first time as we switched on to record this episode. So, but already I can see you're, man with principles, values, and integrity. And then when you see that, and you're in an industry that lacks values and integrities, does that not drag you down at times?
Well, the industry doesn't lack the integrity, but certain people in it do, and it is like anything.
I suppose it's like any other industry in that regard, isn't it?
It's a very tiny percentage. But that tiny percentage, for instance, they say the global toy industry is worth about $80 billion in sales. And if you get a super, mega, fabulous hit toy on your hands, you could be selling hundreds of millions of dollars worth of product. And it's scalable because these factories, it's not too difficult for them to make 10,000 pieces a week or 1 million pieces a week of a product. They just bring in more workers, extend more production lines, and the machines that do the molding and just pumping the product out, plastic product out, really, really quickly. So if somebody comes up with an idea and it gets copied and the market's big enough, these copycats can do $100 million, $200 million, steal that market share very quickly, and move on to something else. But fighting those people, with my first product, it was a helium-filled, our first big product, I should say, 12 years ago. It was a helium-filled balloon in the shape of a shark and in the shape of a clownfish. So it was 4 feet long, 2.5, 3 feet wide at its middle. And because it was helium-filled, it had neutral buoyancy, so it would kind of float in the air. So 4, 5, 6 feet from the ground, it would just sit there floating. Had a tail on it, and you had a remote control handset with 2 joysticks. Okay. And if you wiggled the joysticks...
I'll have a go at that now.
um, and yeah, it was a fun toy. We showed it to Toys R Us when they existed in America. They loved it. We flew it around their offices just by waggling the joysticks. The tail would flick like this, like you can imagine a shark swimming through water. But of course, it swam through air, so we called it air swimmers. And they loved it. And they bought 250,000 pieces on their initial order, and then they came back for a lot more. Within 6 months, the market was being flooded by copycats out of China, retailers that still exist today that will go and buy our consumer products from. So I thought, well, I've been a successful businessman. My previous companies, I've got a bit of money. This is unfair. This is wrong. I'm going to sue them. So I started issuing, lawsuits against these copycats, and then I realised what that world was all about. Winning is good defensive PR if you win. Right? So it's good for marketing because it warns other people off. It says, look, these people will fight if you copy their PR, so stay away from any of their products.
Don't play with them.
Yeah,
go play with somebody else.
So it's like the burglar alarm on the front of the house, and the one next door to you doesn't have one, so the visible one stays unburgled, as it were. So it works from that point of view, but you'll always lose more than when you began. Even if you win, because you're going to lose a huge amount of time. And your colleagues are, and you're going to lose most of the money even when you win. You're not going to recover all of your costs. You're not going to recover as much as they'll pay you damages. You won't get it all. And also, quite a lot of those companies are very smart at this, and they do it. They're professionals at it. So even when you win, you try and get the money out of them, even when the court orders them to pay. So
that just starts another legal battle.
Yeah, it could be a Pyrrhic victory, but the best one we had was against the Silicon Valley backed business that had raised $275 million, and we came out with an artificial intelligence race car set. So if you can imagine Scale Electric, but without the slot in the middle. So this car was battery powered, artificial intelligence, had sensors in the base, and it could read the track. So it knew where it was on the track, and then you could turn it this way, that way. You had all sorts of gaming experiences. It was almost like a video game, but in real life. The handset had a loudspeaker in it, and it would say, "Oh, you've hit an oil spill," and then the car would react accordingly. And so, fantastic product. And a company in America that had this $275 million invested in them, they created something totally in parallel that was almost identical, except that the patents were very different. And as our lawyer said at the time, when they launched theirs and we launched ours, we thought at first they copied us. They thought that we had copied them, until we saw each other's products and we talked to each other and we said, oh my God, parallel development. Well, okay, so we've got a competitor in a market where we thought we were only going to be on our own. What their view of life was quite different to ours. There's no such thing as fair competition. If you're a big tech company backed by Silicon Valley, your job is to be the last man standing. You crush the competition, squash everybody, own the market, and So they told us this on a phone call with their lawyers. The president of the company said, Richard, look, we know that that your product doesn't imitate ours. The patents are different to ours. But we just don't want you selling in America. It's our territory. And, we've got a lot of money. So you won't be able to compete with us. We will fight you. We'll put you through the courts and we'll tie you up and your company will go bust. And they did it as matter-of-factly as that. And so I sat back and couldn't help but instantly think, that's wrong, that's unfair, I don't care, I'm going to fight. So we fought. And after 3 years, we won. And after a further 12 months, they went bust and they lost all of the $275 million, not because of our lawsuit, just because their gung-ho attitude and we're going to be the biggest, we're going to be the best. They threw money at everything and wasted a lot of money.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? That kind of, I suppose, bully board approach. But I think what's more interesting about that is that concept of a lean startup. Sometimes if you start with funding, you just burn it. Start lean, and it
Yes.
can make a hell of a difference,
Yeah.
can't it?
If we'd have had their sort of cash, I would hope and believe that we would be $1 billion business
Yeah,
for sure, because we wouldn't, we believe in, not everything has to have huge cash burn before it gets
yeah.
into profit. And, I think that was what they lacked. They lacked people with commercial nous, and they lacked people from the industry.
So, 16 years in the industry. What keeps you hungry, passionate about wow stuff as a business and the industry?
First reaction has got to be finding the next big thing. The next big thing in
Okay.
toys. And actually, I think we've got a project that we're working on at the moment, and it's with technology. And it could be, we believe, not only will it be the next big thing in toys and collectibles, but we think it will be it's a horrible phrase sometimes because it's so overused, but a game changer in commerce. So we have a business that we call, or the start of a business we call the Immersiverse. So it's in the metaverse, and it's a project we've been working on actually for 10 years. It's our longest, the project that we've worked on off and on the longest of any other toy creation. In fact, probably all of the toy creations we've had combined. And we nearly did do a deal with a company called Hasbro, one of the major toy
Okay.
companies,
Yeah.
with the CEO, president there. But God bless his soul, he passed away a couple of years ago, or a year ago, I should say. But it nearly came to life then. But we've now, all the rights are with us, and we will be bringing that out. So yeah, it's living for the next big thing. Not living, it's the excitement, the drive, the energy comes from thinking, from believing that we will create that next big mega toy.
Brilliant. Watch this space, listeners. Just would it be it'd be remiss of me not to ask this. So I understand you're on The Secret Millionaire at some point over the years. What was your experience of going on the show?
Nothing but good, really. I was very hesitant. That came about. It was a Sunday evening. I was at home, 2010. So I'd recovered from my accident, and I was back firing on all cylinders, and enjoying life again. Gone back to karate. Business was going well. We were a Virgin Fast Track 100, the growth of the Wow Stuff company, and it was a Sunday evening, and I was watching Dragon's Den, and my wife just turned to me and said, "Would you ever consider doing a show, going on a show like that, like Dragon's Den?" And I said, "No, no, not that, but the one I do like, and it was hot at the time. The one I do love watching," I said, was, and wouldn't mind being on if the opportunity arose, would be Secret Millionaire, Channel 4's Secret Millionaire. But it was all very glib. It was very,
Flippant.
flippant,
Sorry, coming off
yeah,
the cuff
yeah,
remark
very
there.
much, very much. I mean, it was like a 30-second conversation tops. Wife never thought anything more of it. The next day, I get an email from the producers saying, "Would you like to appear on Channel 4's Secret Millionaire?" And I couldn't believe it. You talk about serendipity. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was a wind-up. And I wrote to them
Yeah.
and I said, "Is this a wind-up?" "No, it isn't. This is..." So I got home and I said to Karen, I said, "You're not going to believe this. Um, they've asked me to be on." And she said, "Oh, that's amazing." I don't know whether she really believed it. So I went back to them the following day, having told my wife, and said, "Yeah, yeah, I'd love to have a look at it. Can you tell me more about it?" So, but I think I would like to do it. Got back home, told my wife that effectively said yes. She said, "No, we don't want any attention like that. We don't want to be on it. Absolutely no way." So the following day, I went back and said, "I'm so sorry. No, we won't be doing it." Got back home, told my wife, and she said, "No, no, if you want to do it, if you really, really want to do it." So I ended up doing it. And it was a tremendous experience. I was worried that, is it going to be a show that as much as I hadn't seen a show in a negative light before, but if you didn't come across well, or you weren't the genuine thing, or something wasn't
Yeah.
quite right, would they paint you out to be that ogre, or I don't know how you come across, always. So would I come across, not as a decent person, and therefore would that affect my life? So
Yeah.
But it was a great experience. We helped people, and it was very, very fulfilling. And that was 12 years
Brilliant.
ago.
So I've got two final questions, one on leadership and then one on success. So the first one on kind of leadership would be, how would you describe your style of leadership and how has it changed over the years, Richard?
Probably overall collaborative, but I suppose it depends. My leadership of the business and how I lead depends on the circumstances at that time, because sometimes you need to be the tough leader and make firm decisions that are not necessarily the decisions that people want to hear. But other times you need to know that you don't know everything and need to get advice and direction from others, and accept that they might be making the better calls and go with that. So my leadership style is, like a word we used earlier on, is adaptive, I suppose.
It's that situational leadership kind of style, isn't it then?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So, very final question, one I always end with. So, what does success mean to you, Richard?
I remember when I decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was 19 years old and was walking into work in my hometown, Wolverhampton. I'd left school with no O levels to speak of, no good grades, and I didn't get my A levels. Wasn't going to university, needed a job, so I got my first job. Walking into work, and I was wearing a very cheap suit. But I came from a very modest background, and so we didn't have much money. But it was a decent suit, but cheap suit. And it had been snowing, and I remember the slush on the ground had turned black with the lorries and the buses and the cars. And I'd got off the bus and I walked straight into a big pool of this horrible slush, and about 6-8 inches at the bottom of my trouser legs, it just turned black. It was a light grey suit. Anyway, carried on walking to work, and a Bentley pulled up alongside me. Guy wound the window down. He said, "You're Richard." "That's right." "Yeah, you work for me, don't you?" Oh, yeah, it's my company that you work for." "Oh, yeah, jump in, I'll give you a lift to the rest of the way." And it was only about another 500-600 yards. I remember looking down in the footwell on his pure cream white lambswool carpets and seeing that black slush, drip all over it, and thinking, I've only been working here a few weeks, I'm going to get fired. and because he didn't fire me, and he was a wonderful man, very charismatic, and a brilliant product ideas person, and he was a big inspiration. And as I got out the car and I went into work and he hadn't fired me that day, I thought, I want to be like him one day. I want my own company. And it wasn't so much just because he got the riches that went with being a successful entrepreneur. It was also because he got that freedom, and he was clearly enjoying life. And he was, and I saw him so many times coming up with these ideas that energized him, and that kind of got instilled into me. And so when we come up with new great ideas, it energizes me, and I thought, that's what I want to do. So success, what does it look like? I don't think, I hope I never reach a point where I think, that's it, I'm now successful. I hope there's always something else to keep going for. I hope I can help other people. So this would all be part of still a continuing journey. So I don't think there'll be an arrival.
Brilliant. I love that. Great answer. Richard, I've loved having you on the guest. If people want to learn more about you, more about Wow Stuff, where can they go?
Wowstuff.com is probably the best place. It gives a little bit about our history, tells a little bit about the business. Or LinkedIn. You can see me on LinkedIn. I send out posts quite regularly.
As we know. Hence why you're a guest.
Indeed.
Brilliant. I've loved our conversation. Thanks for speaking with such openness and honesty, and just some great lessons there that you've shared with our listeners. So thank you, Richard.
Very kind. Thank you, Warren.
Thank you for listening to the Evolve to Succeed podcast. My hope with every episode is that you've learned something new or heard something that challenged your way of thinking and further motivated you on your path towards becoming a more knowledgeable, informed and inspired individual and business leader. If you enjoyed this episode, then please help us by rating, reviewing and subscribing. We really value your feedback and would love to have you along for future episodes. And please don't forget to learn more about Evolve by going to evolvemembers.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.